This evening we're celebrating two Estonian Canadian talents who have come together to pair their passions, cooking and brewing. First, let's introduce the man behind the stoves, a seasoned chef who, to use his own words, is known for just making honest food.
That's right.
As a young chef, Toivo learned his way around professional kitchens, working multiple restaurant jobs in Toronto and staging under great influences like Master Chef Didier Leroy of LSL, Massimo Capra of Capra's Kitchen, to name a few. He moved to BC in his early 20s, where he climbed positions quickly and garnered his first sous chef job for Whistler Blackcomb, running the roundhouse at the top of the mountain. Must have been pretty cool.
It was. Yeah. Ski out every day. It's fun. Yeah.
And wanting to further his experience in finer dining, he worked his way through sous chef positions at Arbutus Ridge Golf and Country Club before heading the infamous Souk Harbor House, SHH. He started as sous chef at the SHH and became executive chef there before his tenure was complete. From the SHH, he's had many experiences in the hospitality industry, from working as the chef on a factory fishing trawler, fishing off the west coast of BC as far as Alaska, to running his own catering business up and down the southwest coast of Vancouver Island. It's a very seafaring lifestyle. Yeah, hard to cook in those conditions.
It is. Yeah. The melons don't stay on the table.
His recent history in the industry has included mostly remote lodge work, from being the executive chef at a sport fishing lodge, Pacific Gateway Wilderness Lodge, a heli skiing lodge, Last Frontier. I looked that one up, it's very cozy looking. And most recently at Canada's premier grizzly bear viewing lodge, Night Inlet Lodge. Toivo has now made his return to Ontario and has taken residency in Prince Edward County, so keep your eyes peeled and your taste buds open for what he has in store in the county. So, Toivo has built a 5-snack menu for us that will incorporate the complex flavors of craft beer, making it a core ingredient. So everything has beer involved somehow in addition to what you'll be drinking. And he'll be guiding us through his vision and technique tonight. Speaking of craft beer, joining Toivo is someone who I'm feeling everyone here is well acquainted with, personally and in terms of what he's created as well. He's a dedicated brewer from one of Toronto's most respected breweries over on Coxwell Avenue, Godspeed Brewery. We'll give a warm welcome to Kalev. If you've never visited Godspeed before, make a point of going. Just grab a beer, a schnitzel sandwich. It's a really nice place to hang out with friends. Great neighborhood too. Anyhow, so Kalev will be sharing his brewer's insights, telling us about the beers we're enjoying, and explaining how they complement Toivo's menu bite by bite. So tonight, for one night only, Kalev and Toivo are going to be at the helm with a flight of 5 snacks and 5 corresponding beers. 4. And let's get ready for a delicious night and see what happens when beer and food have a bit of matchmaking to put them together.
So if everybody can sit for a minute, I'm just finishing preparing the beer, and then we're going to get started with the first course. You'll see each sheet has kind of a bit of a preview of what's to come. So we're going to be starting with the Svetly Lejak, followed by Yuzu, followed by the Fukami Rugel, followed by the Homage Triple, each one with a very carefully curated and crafted food pairing prepared by Toivo. So I will be out in a few minutes with the first beer, and we'll get everything started, but enjoy for now. Each course will start with the beer. I'll talk about it a little bit, and then Toivo will be coming out with food. We'll also be doing some demonstrations with each of the menu items. He has also incorporated some of the beer into the food. I'm genuinely very excited to try some of the stuff that he's cooked up. It sounds delicious. But with no further ado, let's get into the beer. So the one that we've brought up now is probably one of our more popular beers. It also kind of speaks a lot about the brewery and kind of what we do. So this is our Svetly Lejak 12 degrees. I've been learning, so it is a very traditional Czech style lager with a very traditional Czech style name. I've been learning a lot of Czech and Japanese and German since I started working at this brewery. Our owner, Luc Lefontaine, was kind of a bit of a trendsetter with brewing more kind of Czech-style beers in Canada. There weren't a lot of people doing it. He'd actually come back from basically a brewer's trade mission to the Czech Republic, or Czechia, and came back with both ingredients and inspiration and kind of started making these kinds of beers before many others did. You will start seeing more of these around in the next little while, probably. The name Svetly Lejak kind of speaks to the way that the Czechs approach beer. They have a very interesting culture, and beer is very much a part of it. They are the largest per capita consumers of beer, and it really shows that if anybody's visited the Czech Republic, that won't be a surprise. They name their beers kind of pragmatically in a way that actually describes the beer. So Svetly Lejak describes a beer that is kind of pale to golden. That's the Svetly, and the Lejak is a beer that is brewed to be 11 to 12 degrees, and that designation refers to the amount of fermentable sugar basically in the beer when it started, before it starts fermenting. So that's kind of how strong it can be. So 11 to 12 degree beer can probably be, in the 4.5 to 5% range. So that's that tells you a lot about the beer to kind of begin with. So it is a very just accessible, everyday beer, and they drink a lot of that style of beer in the Czech Republic. So of course that is kind of one of our hallmark beers as well. One of the main things that make this kind of beer a little bit different, and it's a more traditional process that kind of like older European brewers would use. It's called part of the brewing process called a decoction. So you'll notice it has a little bit more of a kind of a burnt amber kind of goldish hue. So there is I'm not going to get like too much into like this is how you make beer, but we will just quickly examine the mash process of a beer. If everyone is kind of familiar with at least the top-down notes on how beer is made, you have grain. Usually barley, it gets kind of broken up, steeped with water, and that mash, that kind of steeped barley tea infuses a lot of sugars and starches and flavor into the water, which then gets separated, and then we boil it with the hops and cool it down and ferment it. The mashing process, where you have both the grain and the water together, these brewers found especially. How do I do this without getting too nerdy? Oh God. A big part of.
Too late.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go there. There's no way around it. You guys are gonna learn lots tonight. There will be a quiz. There's been a big evolution also in our brewing ingredients. Over the centuries, barley is a very good brewing grain. And some of you might have heard that brewers use specifically malted barley. So it's not just like the grains dried off of the stalk. It actually goes through a brief malting process where the grain is like lightly germinated. And is actually kind of it's mean in a way depending on how you look at it. The grain is basically tricked into starting to grow and things that's like in ideal conditions. It's been given a bit of water. It's like, oh, I'm going to turn it into a barley plant, and then they dry it off and kill it. But in doing so, they've allowed the grain to use its natural enzymes to actually start breaking down starches that are normally kind of inaccessible to yeast, and actually start breaking those starches down with its own internal enzymes into more simple sugars, which are the sugars that we use to kind of convert into ethanol through fermentation. Back in the day, that malting process was more rudimentary, and we didn't have as good conversion of those starches to sugars. So old brewers found that if they actually boiled a portion of the mash, so they would take maybe 30% of that mash, the water and barley tea, and boil it on the side. And they found that boiling it actually kind of broke down some more of those starches into simple sugars. Not doing all of it, because then things would get a little bit tricky. But they would do like partial decoction mashing, which is like taking that off, boiling it on the side. And some traditional Czech breweries still do that. And we actually carry on that tradition, doing that kind of very specific decoction mashing process. And this particular beer is a highlight of that, because we actually develop a little bit of color, and it also develops the flavor a little bit more. You get more kind of like complex, deeper notes. So this beer now, sorry, let's start drinking. I got a little long-winded there. Oh, so good. So this beer is pretty balanced. It's a little bit on the sweeter side, not being too sweet. It has a bit of a bitter backbone, but I wouldn't say that it's out of balance. It's enough to kind of contrast the sweetness. It's not so much of a hop-forward beer, even though it does have a bit of that bitterness. It does showcase a little bit more of that kind of nice malt richness, although it does have a little bit of hop aroma. But it is a little bit more on the kind of the fruitier, slightly biscuity side, and it makes it a very good food beer as well. We do serve a lot of it in our tap room at the brewery, and I again welcome you all to come visit us sometime. It is a good place to drink and be merry.
Okay, so throughout the evening, I'm going to show you little snippets of the menu items that we'll create. So basically, I'm going to try to teach you guys things you can take home, use the skills at home. So I won't be able to show you how to make the whole dish, yada yada. I can't show you how to make the bread, this and that. But for this dish, I'm going to show you how to start with a roux and make the beer cheese sauce. Basically with this, you can make your mac and cheese sauce, any kind of cheese sauce, your bechamels, your sous vide, everything. It's the mother sauce to a lot of great, delicious goodness. So, that being said, I'll talk about this a little bit. So, sourdough bread, it was made with the Dunkel lager. So I just replaced the water in the recipe with the lager. And actually, I find you do actually get the lager in the bread. And then with the cheese sauce as well, same thing, right? Starts with the roux, finish it with the beer, and then we put the cheese in, mixy, season, little this, little that, and they end up with the cheese sauce. But I'm really trying to let the beer speak and come out in the food tonight to really showcase what Kalev does at Godspeed. Because I went there a couple weeks ago when we talked about this event, and I really like the beer. So we'll get started here. So a roux is basically butter and flour, right? So butter in the pan. And if you're using induction top, you can turn it down, turn it up. I generally start at a medium heat, so you're not burning anything. I'm almost burning it a little bit right now, so I turned it down. And then now we'll get our flour. Equal parts butter, equal parts flour. You can weigh this out. You can do it by volume. I sometimes just eyeball it, like right now. And we'll see what we can do. And then same thing, we can correct it. If it gets too thick, we can add more butter. If it's not thick enough, we can add more flour. So, can we see on the TV here?
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. So it's not quite thick enough for me. So I'm gonna add a little bit more flour. You want it like, almost like a peanut buttery taste. I guess if that makes sense. So we're almost getting there. A little bit more and a little bit more. And then if you go down to like Louisiana, they'll cook this roux for hours upon hours. And then that's how based a lot of their Creole sauces and stuff like that. We're not gonna cook it for that long. But you can really develop flavor if you cook it low and slow for a long time. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to make something that's going to hold all the liquids and the fats that we're going to put into it in a solid, right? So it doesn't split and break apart. So now I'm kind of liking this. This is getting pretty good. It's almost like a peanut buttery texture. So for this, to make a bechamel, you would just add milk, bring it up. A lot of times people also bring the milk up on the side. Makes it a quicker process, but we're not using too much milk, so I'm just going to slam a little bit in there. Voila. I'm going to bring this up. You'll see it thicken up pretty quickly. Right there, it's all gone. And then, the longer time. Voila. So same thing, we're just going to bring this together. This will cook off the alcohol in case anyone's worried about alcohol, or you can drink the beer on the side. That's all good too. We'll let that simmer a little bit. And then, yeah. Anybody have any questions yet? No? Excellent. I like it.
The question is, the sourdough wheat or rye?
It's a combination of wheat and rye. So I can't do a whole rye. I find it gets too dense and it gets really like musnade, really dense and black. So this is about 75% flour and 25% rye. That's the ratio I found that works really well. And I find you get a good crust, a nice, go at it. And this was at a 69% hydration. If anybody knows bread, hydration is basically the amount of water per amount of flour you use. So let's say if you have 1,000 grams of flour, you would use 690 grams of your liquid, and that would be a 69% hydration.
Yes.
Higher hydration you can do, you generally get more airy, fluffy bread, versus if you go lower, it's more dense. But higher hydration is harder to work with because it gets stickier, and a lot of those kind of things as well.
Will the carbonation of the beer like add to the leavening as well, or does it really?
I don't think the carbonation would do so much. It's more the sugars that would actually. Yeah, 'cause I don't normally when I bake my sourdough, I don't put any sugar. It's pretty much just flour, water, and the starter, which is yeast. So if you add sugars to it, I mean, we add sugars to rich doughs and that kind of thing, right? But overall, I would say that it made it delicious. Yeah. And then now we're kind of getting here. I'm going to go in the back and get a whisk here in a second. But it's all come together. I'm going to whisk out this clumps and stuff like that. So we're going to look clumpy. I can also show you a little secret after too. So, cheese is in. Voila. We always check our seasoning and stuff like that as well. Speaking of which, I need to get some tasting spoons for the next time. And for this lovely guy, I added in a little bit of Dijon mustard. Yeah. And then we had Worcestershire sauce as well. And that kind of gives it that little umami background, a little acidity. And then a little bit of apple cider vinegar. So the secret to a lot of my cooking is I like using a lot of acid, not a lot of acid, but I like using acid in a lot of my dishes. So I'll always have all sorts of vinegars around, from red wine to apple cider to malt to white wine. Pretty much any kind you can get. They always have a little bit of a different flavor, and I find they really help the dish out.
What kind of cheese did you use?
I used the cheddar on this guy. Yeah. So I was trying to keep it simple enough, so it's something easy enough to you can get at home. So this was an Armstrong cheddar, actually. Yeah.
Canadian.
Very Canadian. Yeah. I've actually been making cheese at a vineyard in Prince Edward County, but we deal with strictly sheep's milk cheese, and the milk just ran out. So wasn't able to bring any cheese, and we don't make cheddar by chance. So, and I find cheddar and beer kind of goes really well together. So this is kind of it. We're getting pretty close here. And so I'll show you my little cheater secret. It's kind of good when you have a clumpy sauce. And now I can show you our favorite friend here, the immersion blender. This guy will save your butt in a lot of situations. Everybody see? Trying to see how it's a bit clumpy? Clumps be gone. And that, guys, is quick beer sauce or beer cheese sauce. So that's how quick and easy. You can use this technique to make any kind of cheese sauce you want for your mac and cheese, as I said, pasta, however you want. Another variation is like a soup beast, which is one of my favorites. Basically, there's a lot of caramelized onions in here, and you blitz it up, and it's absolutely fantastic. It goes great with any kind of meat dish, fish dish even. It's lovely. So that's just a quick little technique. Hope you guys learned a little something about this and how easy it is to do at home. Not bad so far? Okay, while we're waiting for the next course is going to be a little salad course, but I'm going to get going on the risotto because it takes a little bit of time. I mean, we have magic happening in the back, so this is not what you're going to be having. But I want to show you some techniques with the risotto as well. This is something that I learned at one of the nicest Italian restaurants that I worked at growing up. And it's just little things I can teach you about this. And barley reacts to the same way as risotto does when it cooks. In fact, it's almost easier because it's not as finicky. So, that being said, we're going to start it off. Same thing, pot, turn it on. Boom. Boom. We use a nice little amount of oil. Normally I would use olive oil, but I will not lie, I forgot to buy olive oil, so we're using sunflower seed oil today. Our onions go in, and this is one of the tricks that I learned. The onions is clutch. We really have to sweat the onions out until they almost get translucent. So this is the key part. And then toasting our rice, which I'll show you after as well. I'm calling it rice, but it's basically barley. And I've been making, I call it barlodo. It's not a term, I made it up. But I've been using that term for a long time. And every time I've made it, everyone's just like, "This is pearl barley?" I'm like, "Yes, it's pearl barley." And they love it. So I figured it'd be kind of a cool concept to bring here. Being beer, barley, you know, kind of makes sense, right? So, this is kind of the part, a little tedious and timing, but really, really makes it. And it also flavors the oil. And what happens to the oil is that once it's flavored, I'll show you when we toast the barley. It coats the barley, toast the rice, all that flavor gets permeated into it, keeps the rice separated. It's a whole bunch of goodness that happens as it's going along. So, if you skip this step, you can have risotto, but it won't be great risotto. It won't be great barlodo. Yeah. It's a timing process. Probably takes about 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm going to show you the beginning stage here, and then it's kind of, I'll teach you about it, like, you know, you keep doing the stop till it disappears, do this till it disappears, but then I'll bring back a little bit, and I'll show you how finishing it. The finishing technique is one of the most important as well. I used to work in a restaurant when I was young. This wasn't a great restaurant by any means, but smaller Italian place. I did lunches there. But at dinner time, they would just saute up onions and garlic before dinner service. And everyone would just come in and be like, "Oh, it smells so great." So sometimes if you smell that, that's what they're doing. They're bringing you in. Yeah. And in Whistler, there was a hot dog stand on the main street. So you get off the mountain, you'd be right there, and you get this whiff, right? You'd be like, "Oh, what is that? I want to go there." Give me this. You had a massive wok. You know what I mean? Like, it was huge. Just frying onions all day, all day. And they just did burgers, poutine, hot dogs, and everything had fried onions on it, and it was the best. And it was all like $16, so very expensive, you know what I mean, for a burger, but. So you see how we're starting to clear up a little bit? We're not quite there yet, though. And a lot of the times when we start this, we'll be using here. We'll use white wine a lot of the times, right? And with any barlodo or risotto dish, you can pretty much do what you want with it. You know, one of my favorites is wild mushrooms or just mushrooms in general. You can go classic Milanese, you know what I mean? Or you can have chicken to it. You can do anything with it. I like to keep mine pretty classic. You know, mushroom's my favorite. Okay, see how we're starting to get not quite translucent yet, but you can see that the onions are breaking down. Slowly but surely. You almost know the smell changes. It's not as punchy onion anymore. It gets more of a sweet onion smell to it. That's great. Okay, so now you don't need to use all of this, but we're going to use roughly about that. So this is a pretty key stage here right now as well. We really want to toast the barley. So some would add liquid right now. You got to chill for a minute. This works even with the parboiled rice we're making it at home. I toast it up like this all the time as well. I'll toast it, put in some oil, really make sure it gets, and I find it, these kernels kind of stay separated, and it's a nicer rice dish. Rice is quite hard to cook well, in my opinion, and I feel like I'm finally starting to get it. So you want to get it to a point right before it starts getting color. You know you did a good job when you can really hear the sizzle. Now this is where the labor of love comes into effect. You kind of can't really leave it alone now. Now what you're going to be doing is you're going to be reducing it down till the rice or the barley soaks everything up, and then we'll add more liquid to it again. You can't do it all at one time because then it'll get almost glutinous and like chunky and lumpy. So you kind of got to wait for it. So then I'll show you what we look for once before we add the stock, and then we continue that process until we get done, and then I'll bring back another batch that's pretty much cooked, and I'll show you how to finish the risotto or the barlotto after. This takes a while, so I want to get this going. And then Kalev will be coming out with more beer very shortly. Right on cue. Onions great. I mean, I find cooking onion looks just as well when you do this process because you're putting it down so much that it's caramelizing the flavors. Like a Spanish onion or a sweet onion, we just even better. Yeah. Red onion you can use as well, but it will change the color a little bit. No. Maybe a little. They're really good if you slice it about this thick. Put it on a sheet pan. You know, I think like do the whole onion. Olive oil, salt, pepper, and balsamic, and then roast them. And once the balsamic caramelizes on it, they'll be soft and they're beautiful on a salad or garnished on a meat dish or something like that as well. I do it all the time. basically want to pull it like Moses separated the sea, and then it kind of stays a little to the side. That's when you know you're ready for more liquid. And then you keep doing that process, either it be, ladle by ladle if you have your hot stock over here. But I'm kind of showing you some cheater methods that you can do at home. Very simple. Our friend Campbell's here.
Does it make any difference whether it's hot or cold? Does it stop?
Yeah, if I'm most of the time I make the stock, right? So it's sitting there ready to go, and it cooks a little bit quicker. But this is good. So we see here. See how it's staying? That's when you know you're ready for more liquid. The same thing, cover it up a little bit again. Not too much, not too little. And then we rinse, repeat, do the whole thing over and over again. You can see how you can't see the line now, right? And that's what we would do continuously until you taste the risotto, right? You'll know when it's done, or the barlotto. You'll know when it's done by tasting it. A lot of Italians will eat it quite al dente, whereas I find myself, I like to cook just a little bit more myself. The reason being why they do the al dente, cool fact is, helps with your digestion. It hasn't broken down the gluten into sugars, so that's just why everyone's guts are a lot better in Italy, they say. So, cool. So this is it. I'm going to bring back another pot with 80% finished risotto, and then we'll finish it off together. And this is the last technique that I find you need to make a really good risotto or barlotto. And it's all about the finishing with the butter and the Parmesan and the whipping. I'll be back.
Let's get the ball rolling on the second course. So hopefully everybody has a glass of lovely zesty yuzu in front of them. I think some of you by the sounds of it are familiar with this beer. This is the one beer that we make that is actually also sold in the LCBO, not like every LCBO, but we are in some. This is a bit of a departure from the previous one, because weirdly enough, this beer is one of the few ales that we make regularly. Everything else is generally kind of a European, like Czech or German style lager, whereas the yeast that we use for this is specifically an ale yeast. And it's very specifically, it is a Saison ale yeast, which is kind of a Franco-Belgian style of yeast that's kind of developed over the years. I did used to, some of you that are familiar with my brewing career, I used to make a lot of Saisons back in the day, my previous place of work. So it's kind of fun carrying that on. This one is a little bit of a lighter Saison. It's coming in, I believe it's at 4.1%, so very, kind of refreshing and accessible. It is one of our more popular beers, also ironically one of the most expensive beers for us to produce, because yuzu is expensive. But we use it for a reason, because it is a really lovely fruit. And it gives a, kind of a lemony citrus, but also has a little bit of additional kind of kick and aroma. It's just a really, really lovely fruit. So we use a, nice fine imported Japanese yuzu juice that gets blended in with this beer along with a little bit of extra citric acid to kind of give it a bit more of a bright kick. So as I mentioned, the ale yeast that we use for this, if anybody is into beer trivia, the ale yeasts are considered top fermenting yeasts, whereas lager yeasts that we use more predominantly are considered bottom fermenting yeasts, and that means that it's very distracting. So ale yeasts will actually, throughout the bulk of their fermentation, during which the yeast kind of grows, multiplies, like doubles and triples its cell mass, and also starts eating up all those delicious short-chain sugars that we talked about before. As it eats them up, it produces carbon dioxide, like farts it out, and belches out lots of ethanol as well. But it's also a little bit of an exothermic process. So as it ferments, it will also generate a little bit of heat. The lager yeasts ferment on the bottom, so the yeast actually kind of congregates and sits more at the bottom of the fermenter, whereas an ale yeast will actually develop more at the top in what's called a krausen and occupies that space more. It's made easier by the fact that ales are also usually fermented at warmer temperatures. So we'll actually ferment these kind of in the 25 degree Celsius range, whereas our lagers will ferment more at like 10 degrees. And as a result, these actually ferment very quickly. And because we go through it so quickly, it's convenient that we can just keep pumping it out, which we do because this beer goes very, very fast. And as I mentioned, once the beer is finished, we then added the yuzu because the fermentation process can be a little bit, the active fermentation can be a little bit tough on some flavors, so it keeps the kind of the yuzu flavor more fresh and intact. So we just blend it in right before we package it. I guess I didn't mention, so even though the owner of our brewery, he's actually from Quebec. He was working for many years at a brewery called Dieu du Ciel, which some of you may be familiar with. But he also married a Japanese woman and kind of started making a lot of Japanese influence into some of his beers. So the yuzu was kind of one of those nods. And then we also do make a green tea IPA called Ochame. It's kind of like a West Coast IPA, but it has some really lovely sencha green tea blended into it as well. But yeah, does anybody have any questions about the yuzu while we wait for Toivo to set up the next course? Yes, John?
What's the difference between top and bottom yeast?
We didn't just talk about that. But the bottom fermenting yeasts are the lager yeasts, whereas the top fermenting yeasts are the ale yeasts specifically. And there are different genuses of the Saccharomyces. The ale yeasts are called Saccharomyces cerevisiae, whereas the lager yeasts are Saccharomyces pastorianus. Yes?
What proportion of yuzu to everything else is
I know, so Vincent's asking like what proportion of yuzu goes in. It's usually, I think, a little over 30 kilograms of yuzu. It is a juice, I guess, blended into. It's usually about a 50 hectoliter batch. So I'd have to do the math on that. But it's not in the grand scheme of things, it's not a large volume, but it is a very kind of punchy flavor, and it really it comes across quite a bit. It's also kind of like diminishing returns, because once we get up to that, you keep adding more and more and more. It's like it's great, but it's also doubling the cost of the beer. So it's yes.
How do you control the alcohol content of the beer? It's just a time factor?
So it can be tricky because I mean the fundamental is targeting the amount of fermentable sugar that is in the beer before it starts fermenting, and knowing roughly where it's going to stop. So the main metric that we follow through fermentation is looking at like the specific gravity or the density of the wort that is like the fermenting beer. So like we start at a certain known value, and we'll usually, especially for the beers we make regularly, kind of like know how they behave, know how the yeast is going to behave with that beer as well. We'll kind of know where it's going to start and where it's going to end. From that, we kind of extrapolate. There's like a known quantity of sugars being eaten, so a known amount of alcohol is being produced. So like we kind of know what the alcohol content is going to be. There can be some rogue elements that you get an infection. Like for instance, the saison yeast that is used for this beer. You'll notice that it's a fairly dry beer. It's not too sweet. It's quite crisp. The saison yeast itself is also a very it's more of an aggressive yeast because it is fermenting warmer. It's a little bit more hungry, and will actually consume some even slightly longer chain sugars. Oh god, we're gonna get nerdy again. Okay, and specifically the saison yeast that we use for this beer is considered a diastatic yeast. So it has a certain gene. It is a STA1 positive in the diastaticus range. So it actually, the yeast produces a further enzyme that actually breaks down more longer chain sugars and makes those then accessible for itself to ferment. So it's very aggressive when it comes to like fermenting a beer out more than like the lager yeast, for instance. So if you were to get like an infection of this yeast in the lager would end up drier than we'd intended, but also stronger. So we have to be very careful. If that answers your question. Any other questions? Yes.
The name of the brewery and the logo. Could you tell us about that?
So I don't know how much meditation went into it. I know that he had wanted to kind of make a name that kind of emulated the Dew Seal brewery that he was coming from. For whatever reason, I think kind of Godspeed came to mind. It is also the name of a band. I think it was like Godspeed Your Black Emperor or something. But I don't think that was a part of it. I think it just, was a word that came up and, it kind of fit the bill. He found that the most important thing was that it wasn't taken. I think as well, which is becoming increasingly difficult with like brewery and beer names. The name itself, I don't know how much like premeditation went into it specifically, but it is, we always make jokes about, Godspeed with whatever it is that somebody's doing at a certain time, and we chuckle.
Well, what about the logo?
The logo, I have talked to our owner about it. He didn't really give me a lot of information on it. I've only been around the brewery since March, so I haven't gotten like a huge deep dive on a lot of the background. Our owner's also only in town a few weeks every year. But it is I think emulates a ship, which I think the brewery itself is, for him, is a little bit of a passport of like his own kind of brewing experience. That crosses seas, so I think that kind of, speaks to that, because we do have, many different kind of worldly inspirations behind both the beers and food that we serve at the brewery.
Is there a Japanese influence?
So the Japanese influence is from his wife, who is Japanese, and he actually lives in Japan with his wife now, so I am kind of running the brewery with a colleague of mine while he kind of sends us instructions from across the Pacific.
How to make a vinaigrette, and the vinaigrette we just did with this salad. I think it's a super basic skill to know, and it's super lovely, and it's you can pretty much make it at home super easy. Once again, we're going to use our magic-friendly immersion blender. These are little hacks I'm trying to show you guys, so at home it's just not intimidating, it's just zip, zip, done. You can have a wonderful homemade vinaigrette. So here, we have just some shallots. So every vinaigrette that I'll ever make has shallots, honey, vinegar, and Dijon mustard to start. That's the classic. Dressings are different, like ranch dressing is different. I wouldn't call that a vinaigrette by any means. But let's start with our classic vinaigrette. So here we are. We got our shallots. We've got our apple cider vinegar. Once again, you can use different vinegars for different applications. Red wine vinegar is my favorite for a vinaigrette. You can use your white wine vinegar, balsamic, malt, barley, anything. But the concept is the same. Shallots, vinegar, Dijon mustard. Dijon mustard acts as your emulsifier, your stabilizer. So it's crucial. A little bit. You don't have to put enough to taste it, but a little bit will always help your vinaigrette from splitting. And I always bit of honey that kind of rounds out the vinegar, brings in a nice little overall smoothness to the vinaigrette, in my opinion. Food is subjective, right? Everyone can have their own way of doing it or their own taste and flavors. So when you're at home, play with it. Add a bit more salt if you want. Add more honey if you like stuff sweeter. You know what I mean? Add more mustard if you like it more tart. It's up to you, right? Food is a wonderful thing that way where you can kind of play with it. But today, as I said, we did a beer vinaigrette. So we got all our basics in here. We got our honey, our Dijon, our shallots, and our vinegar. And now beer. This is the yuzu. Like that much. Yeah. So basically, I had about this much vinegar, so about half beer for this guy, right? And then now, we'll add a bit of salt. I always season it at the beginning as well, and you can taste it at the end and season it as well. If it needs more salt, add more salt at the end. Same thing. You can always add more salt. You can't take salt away. So pinch. And then this, another thing. I have sunflower oil today, not olive oil, because I forgot to buy olive oil, but I like using neutral-based oils for vinaigrettes, like sunflower oil, canola oil, or vegetable-based oil. I find that olive oil, if you use too much of it, gets very bitter. And also, if you put it in the fridge, it congeals, right? So if you try to pull your vinaigrette out of the fridge, it's a big, thick blob. and it also separates that way. So I use sunflower oil as my preferred oil for vinaigrettes. So once again, we start with the bad boy. She's going now, right? Where it gets dangerous. One hand here, one hand here. You want a slow, steady stream, so that way it all emulsifies. And there we go. It's as easy as that. Now at home, you taste this, make sure it's great. If you want more mustard, add more mustard. If it needs more salt, add more salt. Vice versa. If you want pepper, go more pepper. If you like it a little bit more acidic, more acidic. And if, let's say, you're making this and it breaks, you have split vinaigrette, you can easily just start again with a little bit more Dijon. Start with the Dijon again, a little bit more vinegar, and then you can just pour the sauce in again, slowly as if it was your oil again. And a lot of times that'll bring your broken vinegar back. You can do that with mayonnaises, hollandaise sauces. Always just start again and use that as your oil. So that's a quick little trick. So don't sweat it, because we've all been, I've been there, where you think you're gonna make this crazy menu, like, oh, I'm gonna do this hollandaise sauce on top of this steak with this lobster, it's gonna be crazy good. Holy shit, what am I doing? Oh my god, the hollandaise split. Holy crap, And so you're there, you're sweating, just breathe, start again, use it as your oil basically, and most times it'll come back together and you'll be just fine. So that's a vinaigrette for home. Buy one of these if you don't have one, immersion blenders. You can get them at Canadian Tire, Loblaws, No Frills, probably anywhere else. They're a beautiful tool for the kitchen and a nice thing for a hack. I have one more hack to show you later tonight as well with it, and we'll go from there. Thanks, guys.
So in front of you, you all have our Fukami. It's a Munich Dunkel. This beer was actually brewed for, we had a bit of an Oktoberfest event at the brewery at the end of September, and we still thankfully have a couple of these lovely beers around. It is a more of a German style lager. Then you'll notice the beautiful color. So this beer showcases Munich style malts. And we actually used all imported German ingredients, specifically malt from Bamberg. This malt is roasted in a very particular way to develop a nice kind of deep color, and also nice kind of complex malty aroma and flavor as well. You'll notice that the beer is again more in the malt forward vein. It's not a very hoppy beer. It is a little bit sweet, but not too sweet, not too bitter. But it is showcasing a lot of really lovely characteristics that do come from the Munich malt that is used, at least in part, for this beer. The Munich malt is a bit of a specialty malt. I guess we can, nerd out on that specifically with this particular beer. The specialty malts that we use to usually give like a beer a color or a particular quality only make up a portion of all of the malt that actually goes into a beer. So I think the base of this beer is actually all like a fairly pale malt, but we do add a fair bit of a darker malt to adjust the kind of the quality of the color and the profile of the beer. The way that these malts are processed, again, getting back to our malting process, which we've already discussed a little bit, the way that it is made, the malted barley, it ends up being fairly pale, just kind of like going through like the basic kind of like malting and drying process, and that is the predominant malt that's used for most beers. Once they start roasting it more, it actually breaks down some of the sugars and the enzymes in the malt and actually makes it a little bit less able to kind of provide lots of simple sugars and things that the yeast can ferment. So if you used all specialty grain for a beer, you would have a very weak beer because there wouldn't actually be a lot of sugar available. So you always have to kind of adjust the profiles of the malts that go into a particular beer. Sometimes the beer will have only one type of malt, sometimes it'll have 8, 9, 10, depending on what is the end goal that particular beer, whether it's color, whether it's flavor, whether it's the clarity of the beer. If you want to make, a hazy IPA, you have to use very starchy. You usually use like oat and wheats and things like that. So none of that here, of course, but just a lovely roasted Munich malt from Bamberg, Germany. This is one of the kind of several traditional German-style lagers that are usually served around Oktoberfest. And it's although it is a slightly darker beer, it is made to be, again, not too sweet, not too bitter, just quite drinkable as well. It's made to be, consumed in vast quantities, as the Germans do. But yeah, does everyone have a little taste? Does anybody have any notes on the? Oh, yep.
If it's a Bavarian-style beer, why give it a Japanese name?
So this is the inner musings of our owner. It's a lot of our beers end up, if it's not a traditional Czech lager, they tend to be given Japanese names. That's just one of the quirks of our brewery, which the staff of the brewery often.
So does Fukami mean something?
I do believe it means kind of like deep place, or like it kind of does also kind of like reference like a cellar, where like a beer would be aged, or like kind of deep referencing the kind of deeper notes of the beer.
Well, then it's appropriate.
It is, yeah. Just we're kind of picking and choosing our inspirations, but it is at least there's some cohesion in the use of Japanese names for non-Japanese beers, which makes it okay. I'm learning Japanese too as a result, so that's interesting. Does anybody have any questions about this beer or comments on it? Or?
Exactly.
36. Very good. Very good. All right.
Raoul Alinkivi?
I met him in Dublin. He's actually well acquainted with the owner of my brewery because he's very into beer and living, I think, on and off in Japan.
Yeah, he lives mostly in Japan.
Yeah.
He's an Estonian from Dublin.
Yeah, I met him at Piccola Brewery when we were there, and he actually introduced me to the owners there and brought me to a few other breweries around Dublin.
And he's in Rotonia too.
He is indeed. Yeah, no, my owner introduced me with a mutual friend of his who is Estonian, who lives in Japan, and he was like, it sounds like Raoul is going to be in Dublin around the same time as you are for, Lagobedo. So he connected us on social media, and I'm just there, I was also in the Rodalia, the Estonian fraternity, and I started messaging Raoul on Facebook, and he's like, I was checking on the internet, like our own kind of internal Rodalia, like the fraternity server where we have all the information. He's like, I found that like you are also in Rodalia, so it was just a very coincidental meeting, but he's a lovely guy. So I think the next course will be coming up soon. I think you'll find that it's going to go very nicely with this beer, so please again try and save something in your glass, but the main course will be here soon.
Wait, 2 demos for you guys while you guys are enjoying the pork belly and the Barloto. One, I'm going to show you how to make the emulsion. Basically, essentially a mayonnaise. I just like saying emulsion because mayonnaise is just plain, and if you call it an aioli is garlic, you know what I mean? So I call it emulsion, essentially, because that's what it is. This is super easy trick to do at home again. I stopped buying mayonnaise because it's this easy. It's not like you're sitting there trying to pour and pour and pour. It's one pot, one wonder, one zip, and we're done. So I'll show you guys how to do this. So I like to use these at home as well, your deli containers. You can get these at any restaurant, supply store. There's tons around the city. Tap Fong, just down the road from here. Super easy to use, super awesome. So 2 eggs, whole eggs too. We don't have to separate them anymore. I used to separate my yolks all the time when I was making mayonnaise when I was a younger chef. Not anymore. So easy. Dijon again. Why? Because it's the emulsifier. Helps everything hold together. So a nice little dollop of that. I always add a little bit of sweetness, so I like to use honey. I find honey is nature's nectar. It's just delicious. And then same thing, we need our acid again, right? So I like to, for a mayonnaise at home, like your basic mayonnaise, I use a little bit of white vinegar and lemon juice. But because we're going with the beer emulsion tonight, we're going to use a little bit of the malt vinegar and the white vinegar, and we'll add in the beer as well. So that's the dash. And the dash. And then same thing, a little salt and pepper. All the good stuff. Voila. Perfect. And then they say 1 egg generally emulsify like 8 times its volume, right? So you can do quite a bit. So I have 2 eggs here. We're just gonna go, let's say that, once again I use a neutral oil as well, so this is sunflower oil. If you make a mayonnaise with olive oil, it's quite bitter and it's not palatable in my opinion. So here we go, check, this is the trick now. 1 zoom. Mayonnaise, done. Voila. Oh, we didn't add beer. Beer. And then a lot of times too with this trick, if it looks like a little loose in the beginning, let it sit, it'll thicken up a lot of the time. But same thing like I said earlier, if it doesn't work, you just start again and use it as your oil. But most times it thickens right up on you and you have a beautiful mayonnaise, aioli, emulsion, however you'd like to call it. Now, on to trick number 2, I'm going to show you guys how to finish this wonderful risotto. So right now, we're at a point here. This is the risotto that we had before we finished it from the back, or the barlotto, sorry. Kind of getting to a nice little point here, right? We got a consistency right there. Our barley is at the chew we like. And now the clutch part to finishing this is like, this is how I was taught. Very clutch. You add butter, and then Parmesan. And then now this is the big trick here. So you want to kind of start beating it up. And this releases the starches, makes it that really creamy smoothiness. And then you stand here and go more for a little bit. You can see how creamy it's starting to get. And at this point is about the point where you probably start plating it. Because with barley and risotto, once you plated it, they really like to seize up. So you gotta go pretty quickly, right? So if you were to plate it like this, by the time it gets out to you guys, it looks like what you guys have already. So, and that's the conclusion for our cooking demos. I'll be following you guys out with a Kringle bread pudding. And thank you very much for listening.
We're on to the final course now. Does everybody have a beer? Everybody has the triple? Alright, so I think dessert's going to be coming out very soon. This next course I'm like really excited for. Like it's going to be a beautiful harmony of beer and food. Toivo has actually cooked down this beer into a syrup that is incorporated with a gringo bread pudding that is just like it's. But let's. I just want to introduce the beer a little bit first. You'll notice it's a slightly smaller pour. This is a 9% beer, so it is a bit of a stronger kind of Belgian style triple. It is. There is a category of there's like Belgian double, triple, quadruple, all kind of slightly like progressively stronger beers. The triple in the world of Belgian beers is a little bit of a kind of a paler, strong, a little bit more kind of like aromatic beer. This particular beer is actually a very interesting project that I was very fortunate to have a chance to work on. Earlier this year. If anyone's familiar with the brewery from Quebec called Unibrew, I think they also make like the Blanche de Chambly and a few other beers. They were just celebrating their 30th anniversary actually this year and invited our brewery along with 3 other breweries from Quebec to be part of a collaboration project. in which each brewery made their own homage to Vindemont, which is a Belgian triple that Unibrew makes. They are kind of very well known for making like a lot of Belgian style beers as well. So I was able to brew this beer in collaboration with Unibrew and served it at an event and was serving it to like the Unibrew brewmaster. It was kind of cool. But so this beer actually has, funny enough, a little bit of a Japanese kind of hint as well. It is made with a bit of nice toasted coriander. We are also, our brewery is actually situated right in the middle of Little India, so we actually do have some really nice spice shops by us. We're able to get our hands on really nice, like high quality Indian spices. So the coriander from this was from one of those lovely Indian spice shops. But then we did also include a Japanese citrus called Dai, which is a little more in the lime vein. It's a very kind of like aromatic, very like kind of like bright lime-like citrus. Just a little bit was added, and just enough to add like on the finish. I find it just gives like a little bit of a nice little zip. And then there was also a malt-based Japanese syrup. I cannot remember the name of it offhand, but it is kind of like a molassesy syrup that is popular in Japan. We did introduce a fair bit of that into this beer as well, just add a little more kind of like depth of character and color. But it is just a really complex, deep beer. And I think as it warms up, you will notice that like the flavors will come through a little bit more because it's still a little bit cold. But it does have the yeast that's used for these beers is known for being a little bit on the it is a very spicy aromatic yeast as well. Like the yeast actually has its own metabolic pathways to produce different flavor compounds as it ferments. So it does kind of like lend a very nice kind of like fruity, spicy quality to this beer as well. And I think we've done a fairly good job of not making it. Some triples can be very sweet. I think this is. I haven't actually tasted this in a while. Yeah, so it's still got like a nice, round sweetness to it, but like a little bit of heat, a little bit of spice, not too bitter. So even though it's a big beer, it is deceptively easy drinking. So be careful. But yeah, this is a very special thing for me personally, but also it's just thankfully it came out really well. It's just a very lovely beer, and I think it's going to shine along with the final course that's coming out soon. Does anybody have any questions?
When you made this beer, did you do like a couple test beer batches first, or did you just go in and...
We, I've been brewing Belgian beers for quite some time, and our owner, also worked at Unibrew, so in developing the recipe, we already kind of had a pretty good sense of what we were going for, because we also knew that we were targeting, something we were trying to at least emulate the particular Belgian triple. So we knew we were making kind of a simple Belgian triple. We knew we wanted to be 9%, so we kind of were able to kind of build off of that. And thankfully we were able to hit the nail on the head with this. We do a few other kind of Belgian blondes and things, not too frequently, but here and there at the brewery. So with our own kind of process and stuff, we do have these kind of dialed in at least. And
but you get to drink your mistakes as well.
Yeah, what happens if there's...
Well, that would be a lot of, the 50 hectoliter mistake is a lot of mistake. Thankfully, we have, in my experience anyways, yet to have experienced that. But
what would you do in that case?
And so that comes down to the brewery and their own kind of, standards, I guess. Some breweries would be like, oh, it's fine, change the name, call it this, and sell it. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it's what are you guys doing? Other breweries will, dump it, out of, respect for their brand. We've had, small issues and things in the past where we've had to, pin it, but we've never, had to dump batches, and have never, thankfully, put anything out that I wouldn't say was good. But yeah, it is a tricky thing, especially as a brewery grows in scale. If you're having issues and having to dump really big batches, it's a pretty big problem. But thankfully nothing that I've really had a lot of encounter with myself in my career.
Sold it as a Midnight Madness special. Make a little rate out of it.
Where do you dump it?
That's another question. I don't think the city would be too happy with you just pouring thousands of liters of beer down the drain. There are ways of doing it. I think as with all brewery effluent, technically especially with larger breweries, we're kind of operating on still a slightly smaller scale. But they can have a cistern where they'll actually side stream both the chemicals and beer and things, and balance kind of the pH of whatever it is that they are having to release, just to make sure that it's safe for local plumbing infrastructure. Again, thankfully not something we really have to contend with at our kind of scale. And
I have one more question.
sure. Yeah.
Do you taste the beer as it gets made, or do you just wait till the end?
Oh no, we're always we're tasting all the way along. And the other thing is, beyond everything else, it kind of an interesting little quirk of our brewery, which some other breweries do, is all of our beers are mostly naturally carbonated. So as the beer is finishing up, we actually maintain a certain amount of pressure in the fermenters and also in the packaging tanks that they're moved into. Because as I mentioned, beer produces alcohol and carbon dioxide as it ferments. So as fermentation goes on, all that's left in the headspace of the fermenter is carbon dioxide. And if the fermenter is sealed and is cooled down, it actually is allowed. It allows the carbon dioxide to reabsorb basically into the beer and naturally carbonates it, which saves resources. They're not actually having to use carbon dioxide to force into the beer, but it also produces a slightly rounder carbonation. I find it's a little bit less kind of intense, sparkly. It's a little bit of a richer, kind of finer carbonation that just comes from that process. From a chemistry standpoint, I don't actually know exactly why that is. I've been meaning to look into that more deeply, but just a fun little side. So we do also have to kind of taste along the way and check for carbonation, for flavor. So those are all kind of important things. Any other questions?
For your yeast, do you maintain your own live cultures, or is that something you purchase as an ingredient?
So we do, for particular beers, we do have certain strains that we work with from, we work with kind of two main yeast labs. We do kind of repitch yeast a fair bit, especially for brands who are kind of using beers we're looking for the same things from a particular yeast. A lot of our house lagers, we will kind of keep yeast going for maybe up to 8 or 9 generations. But yeast does, as it grows, it kind of mutates, and once it gets into later generations, especially depending on the yeast, if you're looking for something that's making nice clean lagers, it does have to be kind of restarted with fresh cells. Yeah.
We can see lots of happy faces. Looks like you really enjoyed this evening here. But it wouldn't have been possible without those special guys. They get some clean shirts. And Toivo, you have an invitation to demo fundraising dinner this spring, April something.
Spring, April.
So consider yourself involved. Suur aitäh ja teile kõigile ka, sest tõesti on olnud väga tore, rõõmus ja vahva koosolemine. Vincentile aitäh modereerimast, meie tiimile palju tänu, kes mind on aidanud kõigega. Ja we hope that the next cooking show will happen sooner rather than later. Yeah.